Hello, friends. Welcome to Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle, and I've seen almost nothing.
And it is our movie night, where tonight we are going... Well, we have already watched. We did it. We watched the thing. Where you are invited to watch with us, the Willy Wonka starring Gene Wilder, because of the musical episode in Fringe.
Yes, inspired by Fringe's musical episode. So if you haven't seen that, you should watch that. Although, out of context, that would be a wild TV episode to watch. Can you imagine sitting someone down who's never seen Fringe before and being like, now this is a musical episode. You're going to like this.
Check this out. Check this out. It's so great. I can't even imagine what they would even get from the show just from the musical episode. It would be bonkers.
That would actually be a really fun experiment. But I do think it would be a little bit misleading, because they might then think that if they want to watch more, just kind of wacky little conundrums, they should continue watching Fringe. And then we would have to tell them, no, this show isn't just about wacky conundrums. It's actually about violence and trauma. And also there's a lot of gore and blood and creepy
and
things.
Body horror. And
yeah.
I still maintain, can you watch the cold open of the very first pilot episode? If you can do that, you can probably watch the rest of Fringe.
True. I agree with that.
So I guess what we're saying is show them the musical episode and then show them the cold open of the first episode and see what they think.
That? Can you imagine the utter whiplash of that moment? Going from who can directly to just a plane full of people, their faces falling apart, their jaws are dripping off. Not even breaking off, dripping off. If there are any listeners who only tune in for movie nights and have not been tuning in for Fringe, we really apologize.
We would like to apologize on behalf of the gross that is Fringe.
Perhaps you weren't prepared for me to describe what happens to the people on the plane. We'll stop there.
But yes, the reason this is inspired is because Walter basically sees himself as a Willy Wonka type figure in the one of the most recent episodes we watched, and
not the Willy Wonka that I think I saw through my child eyes the first time I saw this movie. Because full disclosure, I had seen this movie before, but I saw it as a kid and I'd just forgotten a bunch of it. Other than kind of the iconic scenes, where Veruca Salt sits on the egg machine, or where the boat scene, because how do you forget the boat scene? And, I'd remembered bits and pieces,
the boat scene, the fuel of nightmares for
exactly,
years
but I had forgotten the dialogue, and I'd forgotten how funny this movie was. Let's start out with that. This is not just going to be an episode where we bash this movie utterly. I think there was a lot of good in it.
Oh, no, 100%. This movie is a classic for a reason,
yes.
For sure.
When I was a kid and I was watching this movie, and when I was a kid and I read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I thought that Wonka was kind of magical. And it was only as an adult reading the book and watching the movie, or an older person, that I sort of came to see him as kind of the monstrous figure he is.
He's kind of a monster.
Yeah. And Walter paints himself as that version of Wonka. The monstrous Wonka.
The monstrous Wonka, while also having this sort of outward facade of, creating these good things, right? Like helping society in different ways. For Willy Wonka, it's, making the best confectionaries that he can possibly make, and being an invention genius, yes. I think. While also piggybacking on this very childlike atmosphere of the whirlwind nonsense that he actually adds to, there's that whole scene where they're in the inventing room where he's adding clothes and things to the, I do too.
So when he throws the shoes in and one of the dads asked him, what's that for? And he goes, gives it a bit of a kick.
I highly recommend going to watch this movie. I can summarize it for you. I'm sure almost everyone listening, or if you haven't heard of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, highly recommend seeing it.
If you have only seen the Johnny Depp one, go back and watch this one.
Yes. I think the Gene Wilder has its place in time. There are a lot of very adult themes, so I do think if you haven't seen it since you were a child, you will definitely pick up on different things as an adult. I had sort of forgotten how very seriously capitalist this entire movie is.
Yeah. So true.
Like, and also, like, that's not how a lottery works. And, like, that's not how winning, you know, a lifetime supply of chocolate works. Like, you don't get it because you are the best, brightest, morally correct child in your class. And I had seen this again as an adult, and I saw it as a child. But, like, I think recently, with all the current turmoil currently happening in the world, it, like, put a lot of different things into perspective. But, at its core, it is a movie about a, confectionista, whatever. It's fine.
An entrepreneur. A very famous, very successful entrepreneur.
Who invites five children and...
Lures 5 children.
Lures 5 children and one of the adults in their lives to his factory. Systematically weeds out the bad ones.
Quotes on
and
bad.
Then awards... Oh boy. Spoilers. They are 8 out of 10 bad. And then awards his entire empire to a 10-year-old.
I say quotes on bad, not because I think that, for example, not because I think Veruca Salt is a redeemable character. I'm not here to defend any of them. I am here to say that Charlie did exactly the same thing that all of the other kids did.
He disobeyed the rules.
Yep.
And he tried, you know, one of Wonka's things after being told he shouldn't do that.
Almost died.
Almost died.
Yeah.
And he is the only one to survive.
Yep. Well, okay. In the movie, he's the only one to survive. In the book, all the kids
he's
walk
the only
on
one to survive and stay in the factory. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
We assume everyone is okay. Like, even in the movie, he's like, I mean, they're fine. Like, I let them go. And I'm just like, oh, how benevolent. Thank you for that.
I was going to say, in the book, you
never
actually
see them again.
in the book, you actually do see them filing out of the factory in various states of being, I suppose, is the best way to put that. Like, I remember seeing the illustration in the book of Mike TV, like, all stretched out and skinny, because that was how they chose to, quote, fix him. He was extra tiny, and they just stretched him out. Charlie did exactly the same thing all of the other little kids did. And I suppose Wonka thought that Charlie redeemed himself by giving back the everlasting gobstopper at the end of the movie, which, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the lesson in giant quotation marks, because the lesson is kind of muddied in and of itself. Because, oh boy, like, the movie, if you think about it a little too hard, gets really dark really quickly.
Oh, but Joy, like, that's what we do. That's what we're here for.
That's what I know. We are here to overthink it. I think it's the ability to extract the doing this for a malicious purpose, but which, by the way, Augustus was not malicious.
No,
Augustus just liked food. Okay,
he really,
his biggest problem is he really, really liked food.
And he fell into a chocolate river. And the thing is, the river didn't have, the river didn't have, little barriers along the side of it, indicating that you could not dip into it. And Wonka told them specifically before they walked into that room that you can eat anything you can touch. So, yeah, if you are invited into a room and told you can eat anything you can touch, you're gonna drink from the chocolate river. You're gonna... What? What do you mean?
I know. No, it's always made me mad that, like, yes, Augustus's big problem is, I guess, he really enjoyed food. Cool.
Yep.
I mean, even Violet's problem of, like, she chews a lot of gum, and I'm like, what is the problem with that?
Chewing gum is uncivilized. Weren't you listening to the Oompa Loompa song?
Didn't you listen to the Oompa? We'll get to the Oompa Loompas in a second.
We'll get to the Oompa Loompas, dear listeners. No, but you're right, because she's a kid and she doesn't get it. And she sees a piece of gum and she reaches for it and puts it in her mouth. And Wonka even literally goes like, you know, in that kind of deadpan voice of his, no, don't, stop.
Yeah,
which
stop, don't, come back, yeah.
So funny. And also so unfair to Violet Beauregard.
I know.
She's a child. When you put candy in front of a child, they pick it up and they eat it. That's what they do.
They pick it up and they eat it. And I think because Charlie gives back this gobstopper, which, by the way, he's the one who, quote unquote, deserves it the most because he's also the poorest of all the children who are there. And is literally the child that Wonka is supposedly making this candy for. Mm-hmm. It's candy for poor, low-income children who don't have a lot of pocket money and who can just suck it, and it will never get any smaller. Like, it is literally built for this child. And so the fact that he has nothing and gives this back, I guess makes him great.
Worthy. Yes.
Worthy.
Makes him worthy of taking on this entire business and running the factory. I mean, Charlie...
Also, okay, wait. Can we also talk about the fact that, like, he was specifically looking for a sheep? Because what he wants is a child who can follow everything he's doing.
Yes.
Not an adult who's going to do different stuff. And I'm just like, this is a manipulative, awful person.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. He takes the most naive child. That's precisely what he was looking for. That's precisely what he was looking for.
Oh, so annoying.
He got it.
It's like he didn't want a free thinker. And all the other kids were free thinkers because they did what they wanted, damn it. Like, it's so, see, this is what I mean. It's like you think about it a little bit too much and you're like, I mean, at its heart, it's like, you know, Charlie wanted it more than all the other kids.
Did
because,
he, though?
You know, I feel like his family wanted him to want it.
What does he mean by wanted it more?
Uncle Joe wanted it more.
Charlie does literally say that. He says, I want it more than any of them as he's crying in bed at night. And his life is hard, and I'm not here to say that it isn't. I'm not really sure why he thinks he wants it more than anyone else.
I feel like it's because Uncle Joe, like Grandpa Joe told him he did, and therefore he's like, that's what this feeling is. And it's like,
yes, I am the most special boy. I am the specialist boy.
Even his mom is like, but that's not how the lottery works. Like, you unwrapped 2 chocolate bars. I'm sure it's already made the news how many chocolate bars were unwrapped at the peanut factory for Veruca to finally find one. Right? Yeah. Like, this is how the lottery works. Also, can we talk about the structure of like the cool structure of this movie where at first I thought I would talk about how this movie is kind of 2 different movies because they hype up Willy Wonka so much that by the time you meet him, it's like this big grand affair. Oh, which by the way, I have a really quick story about like, I might be remembering the facts of this wrong, dear listener, so please forgive me. I'm sure the internet will give you a quick Google search to confirm or deny. But I believe when they were making this movie, Gene Wilder had the idea that he would come out in like with that hobble and that very slow gait because nobody had seen him for years. Nobody even knew if he was healthy or sick or anything. And so he said, well, what if I come out like that and then I do a somersault tumble at the end and like we won't tell the audience. And so like it's this awkward moment of them like clapping and then slowing down because this isn't what they expected to happen. And then he does that tumble and he was like, the thing what that does is it sets up that Willy Wonka is like a charlatan.
He's a liar.
And like, and you cannot prove what he's doing and what he isn't doing. Now, I can't exactly remember, like, obviously that's what it sets up. That's what you see. But I can't remember if that was Gene Wilder or not.
I have definitely heard that story too.
Because, like, can you imagine? Because I think originally he was supposed to come out like we expected him to. Like, jovial and waving to the crowd and being, like, energetic and everything. Yeah. And it's like having that little change really sets up what this is. Anyway, so that's my vignette. But, like, I was originally going to talk about how this movie felt like 2 different movies where before Wonka and after Wonka, when really I think this movie is just a series of vignettes where before Wonka, you get like pieces of Charlie's home life, pieces of his school life. You get newsreels. You get personal conversations of other people in London. You get
I love all of those little vignettes. I have to say,
Yeah,
love
same.
all of the little skits that demonstrate the Wonka mania. You know, with the psychotherapist in his office. I don't know what your favorite one is.
That's my favorite one.
That's with the psychotherapist.
Pretty sure that's my favorite one. I also really the one where the guys.
The woman whose husband is abducted is also one of my favorite ones.
He's missing.
And the ransom
for the call from the kidnapper.
The ransom for the kidnapped husband is her supply of Wonka bars. And she's like, can I have a little while to think about that?
I need a minute. I will say as a child, one of my favorite ones was the computer.
Oh, yeah.
What would a computer do with a lifetime supply of chocolate?
I am now telling the computer what it can do with a lifetime supply of chocolates.
Yeah, no, but like this series of vignettes.
When it says I won't tell, that would be cheating.
That would be cheating. Who taught this computer morals?
Oh, well, that little computer program where the computer says it won't tell, that would be cheating, happens directly after Veruca Salt finds her ticket, which I thought was extra fun. So anyway, a bunch of little vignettes. Continue.
So you get this series of vignettes, and I think what that does is it sets you up mentally for the bonkersness that happens once you're actually inside Wonka's factory. Because I think I feel like as a movie watcher, you're not following a lineal story. And by the time you get to Wonka, it's like, yeah, of course, all of a sudden they're in a tiny room and then they open a door and they're all big and everything's fine. Or like, of course, all this weird stuff is going to happen to the kids because like, you know, like you're already primed for it. And like, I just really enjoyed that kind of comedy where it's like, you just had these little slices of life to keep everybody engaged because really the story is quite short.
Yes.
You know, like without those, you know, it would really just be Charlie like opening up 2 chocolate bars and then getting the golden ticket.
And then exploring the factory and then all of the children being whittled away. But yes,
Exactly.
I think that's exactly what those vignettes were designed to do. I think it was that to set you up for the wackiness of the factory. And then also, you know, if Charlie had opened 2 chocolate bars and then gotten into the factory, then there wouldn't be that moment where we, the audience, were also seeing Wonka walk out of the factory and expecting him, as you said, to be this huge personality and exactly the Wonka we would come to expect because they had to make us expect that first. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like they had to give him his reputation.
To see the mania.
Yes. And then become part of it. And then there you go.
Yeah, I definitely became part of that as a child. Like, I would always get really excited watching the beginning of it, which is funny because it's like you would think a child would just fast forward through all that, you know? But, like, I did not.
It was just so funny.
It was so funny. It was so funny. And just really interesting and nice. Although I did usually ask my mom, like, are there really that many Americans in Britain? Because it seemed like everybody we talked to was American. And I was like, huh.
Well, also a few of the winners were American as well.
Yes, a few of the winners were American. Willy Wonka himself was American. And I'm just like, okay, all right,
those
cool.
Americans and their candy. They know how to do it right. Sorry, anyone who's British. You have good candy, too.
I would argue better chocolate.
Definitely.
I would argue definitely better chocolate.
I mean, if you're going to compare any other chocolate to Hershey's chocolate, sure, fine. But that's like a special thing.
No, I know. I always tell people, like, look, we don't talk about Hershey's in this house. We can eat it if we want, but we know it's trash. You get Wilbur's if you want the good chocolate. Pennsylvania's finest. But
see,
yeah,
this feels off topic, but we are still talking candy. So I think that we are, in fact, on topic.
We are, in fact, I swear, this is not a tangent. This is a related tangent.
The entire beginning sequence of the movie is so good and makes me so hungry because the beginning sequence is just all of these chocolate factory scenes with the dripping chocolate and swirling and being made into kisses. I mean, it's just immediately magical. And then it opens up at Bill's candy shop, which is where we get the song that's also in the Fringe episode. What is the actual name of that song? Is it just The Candyman?
The Candyman. I'm pretty sure it's The Candyman.
And I, as a child,
or The Candyman can,
have always wondered what a scrumdiddlyumptious bar is. Like, what's in that? How is it? What does it taste like? Why is it so scrumptious? Is it nougat? Is it caramel?
It's probably nougat. I feel like it's nougat. Actually, they always looked like turtles to me. Have you ever seen a turtle?
Oh, no. Not the round ones. The big long one.
Oh, yeah, the big long one.
Yeah, the big long one.
I never understood what that was either.
That
I always
Charlie,
assumed...
like, literally horks down when he finally gets to eat it. And I'm like, oh, boy, I've been there, man.
Sometimes you just really want that candy bar. Sometimes that's it. Sometimes that's it. That's your whole day. Mm-hmm. I always thought that one was like peanut butter and something. But I almost like that the long one. Yeah. Like with individual, because he almost seems to like not take break pieces off, but like, yeah.
Kind of like
it seems like he's picking up pieces of it.
Kind of like those Kinder wafer things that are kind of segmented.
Like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
I also love that they, like, never explain it so that everyone's scrumdiddlyumptious bar could be different.
So true. It's like the gray stuff from Beauty and the Beast. What's the gray stuff? Looks delicious.
What's the gray stuff?
I always, by the way, my child brain always thought the gray stuff would taste like grapes, and I do not know why that is.
Because it's alliteration?
Because it's a little tiny bit purple? I'm not actually sure. Grape flavored is what I thought that was.
Heard gray and went grapes, and then you just decided it tasted like grapes.
Doesn't matter. It's
Do you
delicious.
actually have a neurodivergent? It doesn't matter. It's delicious.
Do I actually
Your
have
neurodivergence is showing. I feel like that makes sense to me because my neurodivergent brain understood that in a way that I think your brain is like, that's not true.
No, and I think that a lot of times my brain does in fact operate that way.
I mean, the gray stuff is delicious. You know, like the wonderful parts of this movie are the ways that grown adults will just act like children. Yes. Because a candy maker has been like, would you like a year's supply of candy? Like, I love that. I just love that that's like the move. That's also why I'm like, hey, if you haven't seen it in a while and you want it, or you haven't watched it since you were a child, like definitely. And I take a look at it.
I think it's 100% the lifetime supply of chocolate. And it's also just, it's candy. And it's inherently, it's magical. It's this thing that you want. So when, like, the scene where Wonka opens up the floor to everyone. I mean, I love when he's kind of slowly walking down and then back up and then down and then back up the stairs and everyone has to like, so that they don't walk ahead of them. And then when he finally lets them go and they just have at it and all of the adults are in the mix with all of the kids. Can we discuss how the first thing Veruca Salt did was to take a thing and smash it open to see what was inside?
Yes.
This is a very special child.
Look, she is very passionate. She knows exactly what she wants out of life. Does she? Well, maybe she doesn't. She thinks she does.
She thinks she does. What she wants is what she can see.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, I think when I was a kid, did any of those songs hit different for you as a kid? Did you feel like shamed by any of them?
You know, I don't really remember much of the movie.
Fair.
Like, I kind of what I was saying at the top of the episode, I think that the only parts of the movie that I remembered were the fun candy bits and the, what do you call it? Oh, the boat scene, which was frightening.
Yes,
the fun candy bits and the frightening boat scene. I will also say that I grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian community. And so the idea of everyone just imposing their morals, whether or not those morals are right and good and correct on a group of children, would not have registered to me as unusual. Let's just say that. I wasn't watching this movie and thinking, for the first time I'm seeing this now. That was life.
No.
That was what it was like to be a child.
Yeah, and I often wonder about, like, kids who had either strict households or very, or not even necessarily strict, but like had a very almost conformist sort of upbringing, where like either, and it could be anything, right? Like it could be religious based. It could be, like your parents just say this and this is how it goes.
Right.
It could, maybe the school was that way, but like anyone who had that in particular, I always wonder about them watching this movie and being like, I mean, that was just life.
It was white noise. It didn't even register.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Because yes, my house and my school and my community were all of those above things.
I mean, makes sense. I will say, as the person who has seen everything, the song that actually got to me was the one from Mike TV. Because they basically just shame him for watching television.
Yes.
And it's just like, isn't this like
right?
As the person who watched all the television in the house, I was like, all right, fine, whatever.
Sure. Yeah. No, 100%. Whereas I grew up in the house where you can only watch 30 minutes or whatever time. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, super restricted. Like, I totally get that. Like, the laws are already in place, right? Like, you don't need the song to feel any shame because it's like, well, I'm not even doing that. Did you chew gum a lot as a child?
Did I chew gum a lot as a child? I think it was like candy. I think getting to chew gum was like getting to eat candy.
Was like getting candy.
So the idea of eating gum all day, every day would be like eating candy all day, every day. Which actually I did. I was allowed access to quite a bit of food. I think for whatever reason, candy was not off the
menu.
Yes, that's exactly the phrase I was looking for, and I don't know why I was like off the what.
I get it. It is what it is. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
No, I just, oh man, is this the part where we talk about the weird capitalist overtones?
Yes, I think we have to talk about that.
Yeah.
We have to talk about the Oompa Loompas, and we might as well do it in the middle of the podcast episode, and then perhaps we can find something
so we don't end
joyful to end on. Yeah, like what if we didn't end on enslavement, right?
Yeah, what a great idea. Yeah, so and just this is, there are people who have theses. There are people who have YouTube video, like hour-long YouTube videos addressing the Oompa Loompas in this movie. I'm not here to give you like all of the rundown on all of that. I am here to simply say it's just dressed up white savior slavery manifest destiny, and I hate it, especially now as an adult and understanding exactly what it was. Like it just mirrors so much of like colonialism and like the worst parts of, so the story goes is
even the way it was framed, right? Because when the Oompa Loompas first enter, then first of all, they quote, come from a country no one has heard from, including and listeners, you didn't get to see my big quotes that I was making there, but I was. They, quote, come from a country that no one has heard of, including this geography teacher. And then Wonka proceeds to tell us that the country they come from is cruel and terrible, and they were in incredible danger for all of their lives. And so he said to them, and this is his quote from the movie. He says to them, come and live with me in peace and safety. ... What that means is they are trapped in this factory where they must work for him. Yeah, he enslaved them.
And he just enslaves them.
Yes.
He just enslaves them.
And he dressed it up as him saving them, and he absolutely was not.
Yeah, and it's also framed, like, not only is it framed that way, the reason he found them is, like, it's very convenient that he finds them right after there's this story of, like, well, everyone wanted to work in the Willy Wonka factory and everyone was stealing his secrets, and he decided he couldn't trust anybody, so he closed down the factory and wouldn't let anybody inside. And then it's revealed that, like, he has these Oompa Loompas working for him. And I'm like, so you literally just went to slave labor because you couldn't trust anybody with the resources. Like, I assume, like, you're probably not paying them a fair wage, and, like, the
or at all
the overlap
because
of that, or at all.
What would they use money for? They live in the factory. They are not allowed to leave the factory. They are not allowed to interact with anyone, which is why they can't share his secrets. They certainly don't buy clothing or anything they need with that money because he forces them all to wear this one uniform.
Or two, if you're working in the TV room.
Oh, so true. So true.
Yeah, right. They have their individual uniforms all laid out for them. You know, it's not great. I do appreciate the, you know, like, giving work to little people in film and media. Like, that is good. There isn't a lot of, you know, like, there isn't a lot of opportunity for little peoples to actually act. So, like, that's great. However, we can always do better. Like, you don't always have to be a Munchkin in Munchkinland, an Ewok, or an Oompa Loompa. Like, there has to be something else.
And that's it. We said it. We said our piece. We're not huge fans, and it's this big glaring blech in the middle of this, or kind of sprinkled throughout this movie, along with a lot of good. And did you want to talk about some capitalist stuff, or do we move on?
I mean, like, you know, at his heart, Willy Wonka is a capitalist, and he is, you know, like, he is, you know, and I think we've already touched on this before, that he was basically just looking for a rube to, like, do the same things he did after he could no longer do this anymore. Like, somebody to keep his secret of the Oompa Loompas and look after them in giant quotation marks. And someone to, like, make these recipes the way he would have made them and have these, you know, and, like, provide this legacy for someone.
He's gone and found this person, I think, before he's too old to run the factory so that he can train them, I suppose. I know there is a second book, actually, but I've never read it.
Oh, The Glass Elevator? I've never read it
I don't
either.
even know. I don't even know what it's about.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when I was so young, I barely remember the differences.
I mean, that is... I don't think that I would have been able to name them for you either. It wasn't one of my personal favorites. However, all that to say, if anyone out there has read the second book and knows that is in fact what happens, great. If that's not what happens, also fine. I don't really care. I think the implication at the end of this movie is that he's going to train Charlie and have Charlie take over the factory and kind of fill Charlie's head with his ideas.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, and, you know, that's entirely his prerogative because he's the one with the money and Charlie has literally nothing.
Literally nothing.
It's this weird capitalist, like, fever dream of you just have to work hard and you'll get what you, not just survive, you'll thrive and, like, you too can be a billionaire. You know, like, it's this...
the lie of the meritocracy is what we're discussing here. Yes, exactly. Like, Charlie is the specialist little boy, and he wanted it the most, and so he got it. And because he worked hard and did good and was honest, he got what he, quote, deserved, and the other kids did not deserve to have this, and here's why.
Yeah. Exactly. No, it's exactly that. And when in reality, the other kids are like, you know, they're not poor. They're not dirt poor, for sure. Like, I think Augustus's mother, like, walks around in a fur for half the movie. Like,
Veruca's literally rich, but I don't know that Mike TV is much more than middle class.
I mean, maybe not. I mean, Violet's father is a car salesman, and, like, that's hit or miss. But, like, they're all definitely doing leagues better than Charlie is.
Yes.
And And it's, you know, like Charlie at the age of, what is he, 10?
I don't know.
12, something? This doesn't really matter. But, like, he's also working, and his mother is working, and his grandparents are invalids and have to stay in bed. And, like, they are the two breadwinners of this 6-person household.
Yeah.
And it's this, you know, this weird, like, if you just work hard and play by the rules, then, you know, one day you too will not have a care in the world. And, like, I hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that because that's not how it works.
Yeah, because it's a lie.
Because it's a lie.
And everything, much like everything else that comes out of Wonka's mouth.
Exactly.
It simply is not true.
Simply not true. It's such a, you know, and it's so clear cut that it's, but, you know, it's like, it's presented in such a way that it's like, yeah, this is totally possible. When it's like, oh, absolutely not. Like, you know, the odds of a little boy opening up 2 different chocolate bars and finding a golden ticket when people were hoarding thousands and thousands of chocolate bars to actually find this ticket, you know, and then like being rewarded this great thing of basically taking over a factory, I assume when he came of age, you know, and like,
is that such a great thing? Wonka also tells him that he's going to put up Charlie's factory, put up Charlie's family at the factory. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's also not great. I mean, he really is just a king of taking advantage of less fortunate people.
Right? Like, it just didn't, the whole thing was like, and this is exactly what you want to hear me say. And yes, I actually do have the means to do this for you. So we're just going to do it.
Yeah.
And I hated that. Like, I hated with like the adult knowledge of seeing through it, I think, that I just, there was so much in there that was like, yes, this is like a magical folklore story to tell children. But like, God, I really hope these kids don't fully internalize that like someone's going to show up and solve all your problems. You know, like.
I mean, you know, a lot of magical folklore stories or fairy tales have, especially the ones that are a bit moralistic, have lessons and ideas in the center of them that as an adult looking back on, I've thought, have made me just cock an eyebrow.
Like The Little Mermaid, where you must kill the man you love to get your fins back. And it's just like, or
Red Riding Hood, perhaps? Red Riding Hood is a little bit... But we're not here to talk about fairy tales.
We're not here to talk about fairy tales. I mean, that's essentially it. I don't, I think as myself, like, admitting how much of an impressionable youth I was as a child, and just not being able to, like, clock the BS, I think.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, like, realizing as an adult of, like, God, is that really what Charlie actually needs? Like, does Charlie need this?
Yeah.
Is this in his best interest, or is it in Willy Wonka's best interest?
It's in Willy Wonka's best interest, 100%.
Exactly.
I mean, Willy Wonka doesn't see it that way. He sees it as lifting Charlie out of this life that he would have, I don't know, I'm not even sure how Wonka would have seen it, actually.
I don't know.
But I think that he sees it as lifting Charlie out of what must only be a miserable life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Lord only knows what was it? Arthur Slugworth, the not Arthur Slugworth. What was his name?
I think Slugworth was the name, but I don't remember the name of the real. I don't remember that. Yeah, I don't remember the real name of the person. I just know that he was acting as Slugworth for the movie.
Yeah. Like, who knows what that guy's life is even like?
Mr. Wilkinson. I wrote it down.
Mr. Wilkinson. Like, who knows what Mr. Wilkinson's life is even like as the, like, not Slugworth. You know what I mean?
Like, terrible. Truly terrible. It must
Has
be.
to be truly terrible. Must be. Must be. Like, I'm also sitting here like, how many, how many eyes and ears does Willy Wonka have all over town that Slugworth can just be there at every single time a kid finds a ticket?
Just every time.
How many secret tunnels?
And I know that's a little bit of movie magic, but honestly,
of course,
who would want to work for someone like Wonka? He is actually the worst employer because we've already discussed how he systematically takes advantage of everyone around him. The Oompa Loompas, the kids, probably Mr. Wilkinson does not appear to have a life of his own, but also he's exactly the sort of person who would overwork and underpay you because what he is giving you is the privilege to be inside of Wonka's factory and to work with him.
Exactly. I keep thinking about Wilkinson, like, but what is your life like? You middle-aged white guy, right? Like, who can obviously move freely about town. Like, are you, like, all he says is he works for me, but I'm just like, is he a driver? Does he, like, fetch your meals because you're kind of a shut-in? Like, what, like, exactly what does he do, sir?
Well, someone's got to coordinate. Someone's got to coordinate the deliveries, right?
Also true. Maybe he's the delivery truck driver.
He's just in charge of operations, like general operations at the factory.
He's an ops manager. Perfect.
What goes in, what goes out? Is everyone fed? General operations.
I like that. But yes, why don't we talk about, I think the next thing, Walter and Wonka, or did we already talk about that?
We can talk about Walter and Wonka. I don't think we've really talked about it, no.
Yeah, I love that, I love that Walter is, it's exactly like you said, where it was like he has adopted this much darker Willy Wonka persona, and like not embraced it, but like basically understood how he has portrayed himself versus who he actually is. And, and we see that in his story to Ella, and it's so heartbreaking too, because it's like, he invented hugs,
yes.
Yes.
Because he's come up with all of this, and I say magical because of, that whole, any scientific something that's significantly advanced is indistinguishable from magic kind of piece, I think is what Fringe is playing with a little bit here. Where he's come up with, even outside the context of the musical episode, right? Like, even when we're talking about Walter in the show, he's come up with all of these wondrous things, but he has destroyed hundreds of lives in order to do that, which is why in the musical episode, he kind of frames it as he steals children's dreams and replaces them with nightmares, right? And it's not even just the kids. It's not even just the Cortexiphan kids. Almost every single, what was Astrid's name for his horrible home videos? Was it that?
Esther.
Oh, no. I meant every time they watch a video of one of his scientific experiments. Oh, yes.
It was like Walter's horror home videos or
something like that, right? But almost every single one of his test subjects, not even just the kids, is this unwitting test subject who doesn't really know what they're getting into and has consented anyway, probably because they were paid. Much like how see, I did it. Much like how Wonka has lured these children and their grown-ups into a situation they really don't understand. Like, they think that they're just going on a tour of a factory.
Why? Who would think anything weird or untoward would happen with a chocolate factory? And, like, you've invited children, like...
You've let them bring an adult.
I just, like, there's a beautiful, like, self-awareness that Walter has that Willy Wonka will never have, Because I do think I think as deep as Wonka gets is, like, realizing that no one else is quite like him, which isn't really deep so much as just utterly, like,
self-aggrandizing?
tone deaf. Yeah. You know, like, I just keep imagining him just being like, you know, like with the stop, don't come back. And he's just like, I mean, I told them I don't repeat myself anymore because I'm an eccentric and I live alone and all I live with are Oompa Loompas that follow my every whim. Why am I going to argue with a child?
You signed the contract. I tried to warn you. When Augustus Gloop falls into the river, okay, I acknowledge that this is funny. But when Augustus's mom turns to him and goes, do something, and he just looks at her and he goes, help, police, murder, and then looks back at the river.
I know. My favorite part of that scene is how loudly he's yelling about his chocolate Augustus is literally splashing around.
Help, police, murder.
Do something. I am doing something. Not doing anything.
But yes, you're right. I think that to go back to your point, Walter understands that he has done irreparable harm to people, and I don't know, and that he's never really going to be able to make it right.
Even with his ending, you know, like forgetting that Ella, you know, kind of fixes it a little bit for him. But like with his ending, he realizes, you know, and he's said this for a long time, that he's like, but Peter will never forgive me. And Peter will no longer talk to me. Like, he'll never talk to me again if he knows the truth. And, you know, like, he can want Peter to forgive him as much as he likes. But he understands that the reality could be that Peter decides to never ever talk to him again.
Totally.
You know?
I even think that he's leaning towards Peter probably won't, because I don't know that Walter thinks he deserves to be forgiven.
I also agree with that. This is a, like, he shouldn't talk to me again because I've done terrible things, you know?
Right.
And also why I think we've never, like, Walter has never disagreed with Peter whenever they've had arguments about, you know, like, Peter calling him terrible, awful things, you know? And, like, Walter's never fought against him on any of that because he's just like, well, what could I possibly say? You know?
Yeah.
Like,
And I think that he's occasionally tried to make kind of excuses for himself. You know, it wasn't me, it was Belly, I didn't really know. Or it was, you know, a justified cause or a justified action. But he never denies that he has. You're right. He's never denied that he's actually done it. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think the first big argument they get into is because he feels like he's being babied by Peter. And, like, you know, like, that to me is so weirdly telling because it's like, Peter has said some awful things about Walter up until that episode. Like, really, truly bad. And, you know, called him such horrible names. And Walter never, ever fights him on it. And, like, only, and yeah, I think deep down Walter does think he deserves it to some extent.
Yeah.
Sorry, if you listen to these episodes just for the movies, there is a bit of fringe talk in this one.
It
You're
wasn't
welcome,
our,
I guess.
It wasn't
Check
our
out
intention, but it happened.
Well,
you know, sometimes when you love a thing, you just can't stop talking about it.
just can't stop talking about it.
Okay, Wonka. You know, we haven't really talked about how witty a lot of this show was.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, Willy Wonka is a master wordsmith, which I didn't really appreciate as much as a child. Like, I think I heard the jokes and I thought I kind of knew they were funny because other people were laughing. But, like, I never fully found the, you know, like the candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker joke, which I always thought was funny. And
the gum is a 3-course dinner. Bull. No roast beef, but I haven't quite got it right. It was just so...
I know. Everything he says. And it's so fast, too.
It's so fast.
And he drops them in the middle of conversations.
I think that's why I didn't get it as a kid, because this isn't really a situation like your Splash situation where things were happening that I was unaware of. I think it was just so fast. And I was so distracted by everything else because there is a lot to be distracted by that I just kind of didn't register it.
Yes. No, that's exactly it. Because, and like, the wordplay is so much integral to a part of who he is that I think you just miss it. Like, if you're not looking out for it, you just miss it completely. I mean, that entire, like, the invention room, that entire scene is just all wordplay. Entire scene.
Probably, you know what? Maybe almost everything that Wonka says. I'm sure that some person out there has done this, but I would love to, like, have written down everything that Wonka says in this movie and then just highlight every single one that is disingenuous. Not even an outright lie, but even something like that's just a play on words, even, or a bit of a joke, or him having a laugh at the expense of someone else, or.
Yeah, no, and there's tons of quotes too that he throws in there. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I think the poem that he's singing on the boat, is a poem, like, written by a poet.
It's like an actual thing.
I think. I think so, and I think I might be mistaken on this one, but I think the, like, we are the music makers and we are the dreamers of the dreams is a quote from something else. I would be curious to see how much of it is actually, you know, or it's like candy is dandy as liquor is quicker. But, like, that is, you know, like, a phrase people say. I would be curious to see how much of the script of his lines in particular are actually his lines.
Like, him speaking to someone else genuinely.
Yeah.
Probably, I mean, the last scene in the movie comes to mind because I think that is about as genuine as Wonka can get, where he's finally accepted Charlie. But, you know.
I mean, there's definitely, like, that whole, it is right at the end. There's so much that, like, he seems genuine when he may not be. You know, because... And it gives you this impression of, like, an adult is speaking quietly. Yeah. Therefore, you know what I mean? Like, he's able to have a tone in his voice that you might necessarily, like, equate with trustworthy and honesty. But, like, you don't know.
Right,
like, you don't know that.
Exactly. He's conning you.
He is, above all else, a con artist. Yes. And he's really good at his job. And that's just it, which is amazing to me because I'm just like, this is the most famous chocolatier in all of the world. And I'm just like, you don't need to be this way, my dude. Like, what if you weren't this way?
Yeah. And you know what? Wonka would probably tell you, well, I tried to be a genuine person who invited everyone in, and all they did was steal my secrets. And to that I say, bah humbug. I don't know. I just don't think.
Why? How many secrets did you have to steal, Willy? How many secrets were there? Why are you keeping secrets?
I just don't think that that's a good excuse for his very poor behavior.
It comes down to, like, hidden amongst the eccentricity of somebody being, like, rich and influential is just like a con artist, which is so unfortunate.
In a weird way, because I think that a lot of times it's almost like if you tried to catch him on anything he was doing, he would say to you, I told them up front. I told them
it was all in the contract.
It was all in the contract. I assume there's an accident indemnity clause. Never between friends. He literally said that it isn't in there.
Never between friends.
Never between friends. And it's like he's never lied, but he is constantly lying. And so you can't catch him in any of it.
He is slippery. He is a slippery dude. Oh, that's kind of a positive note. Was there another positive note? Was there one more thing?
What, do you have one more thing?
One more thing?
I can talk about the chocolate room some more. I really like the chocolate room. What, Joy, I have a question. What did you think that daffodil teacup tasted like? Because I know what I thought it was, but I feel like I'm weird.
Well, okay, so as a child, I probably thought it tasted like marshmallow because I was a weird child. But
Marshmallow.
I think as an adult, I feel like it tasted like an elderflower or something.
But it almost looks crunchy. No, like when he bites into
crunchy.
it, there's like a...
Yeah, like a biscuit.
Like a layer of chocolate, except my brain did not think it tasted like chocolate.
Yeah, I didn't think it tasted like chocolate. I still don't think it tastes like chocolate.
Whenever he bit into it, I imagined that it would taste like wax. It would taste and feel like biting into wax, but not bad wax. Have you ever had that white rabbit candy?
Yes, I have actually.
The paper that's on the outside of it that you eat is what I imagined that daffodil teacup tasting like.
I mean,
kind of bland, but not terrible.
I mean, I'm sure, like, I wonder what they actually gave him to eat. Mm-hmm. You know, like, I wonder this a lot. Like, in Game of Thrones, like, Daenerys is supposed to be eating a giant, like, horse heart or something.
Yes.
And it's basically a giant jelly baby. Like, it's a giant, like, sour gummy that she's eating. Yes. And I'm just like, of course it is. No, yeah, it 100% could have tasted like that. I think as a kid, I thought it tasted like marshmallows, even though it had that crunch. Because it was like, you could still have that, like, wafer that kind of tastes like, you know, like yellow and, like yellow. Good job. Like almond and, you know, like that kind of just textured.
See,
a savory. Like, I think the teacup was savory.
Oh, that's so interesting. See, tasted like yellow is actually a phrase I understand. I think things can taste like yellow, just like things can taste like blue. Sometimes things just taste like blue.
Sometimes things do taste
like
blue.
What did you think the gray stuff tasted like?
I always assumed the gray stuff was pate. And they just didn't want to...
That is so much more reasonable.
But they just didn't want to say pate to kids and then have the kids turn to their parents and go, Mommy, Daddy, what's pate?
That is so much more reasonable than what I thought it was, which was like whipped grape flavored something. Okay, that was my one more thing that clearly I look at things on.
That was your one more thing?
My one more thing is that sometimes when you have a movie like this, I will look at the thing on screen and wonder very intently what it could possibly taste like. And it happened with the teacup, and it happened with the gray stuff, and it happened with everything in that chocolate room, especially the large white dots on the mushroom.
Oh my God, right? I imagine those probably taste like a creme of some kind, like a what's it called? Like a Boston cream something.
You know, watching it as an adult, I can very clearly see that it's liquid in form, or kind of like a cream, like you're saying, but
like a whipped cream something.
My child brain thought that was something powdered. I don't know why. And then I remember seeing it. I saw it again recently because, you know, we were watching it for the podcast episode, and I go, what? Oh, like looking closer to screen. I thought that was powder in there.
My one more thing is my favorite candy when I was a child makes an appearance in this movie.
Oh.
And it's the dots on the paper.
Oh, yeah.
And so when they're in the Bill's candy shop and they're like pulling rows and rows of that, I was like, yes, I would eat all of that. I would take the entire row for myself.
Oh,
and
that
like
is so
I can't tell you how much paper I probably ate as a child.
See, you know, the only reason I didn't like that candy is because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, and every time I took one off the paper, I had to very carefully scrape all of the paper off of it before I ate it, and it just wasn't really worth the trouble.
That's fair. That's fair. I feel like this is the difference between a perfectionist and somebody who just eats trash candy and doesn't care.
I mean, I also enjoy trash candy, just not that trash candy.
Just not that trash candy. I have on occasion just had it again because I was like, well, why not? And it's funny because it's like, if you don't get it when it's stale, it comes right off the paper. And so it was just like, I wondered for years if I was just eating like stale candy because the other kids didn't want it.
Oh, I mean, clearly I've only ever had it stale because that was my experience of that candy as well.
Right?
Oh, Bill's candy shop. Just candy for everyone. Charlie's like so sad outside the window staring in. when the candy is all free, Charlie. Go inside. The candy is free.
I know.
Does that count as one more thing?
I mean, that movie made, like, that song basically have free candy. But as we all know, Bill does charge for his candy. I wonder if those kids had a running tab that he just kept tabs on. Like, that song, nobody pays for anything. But later, we clearly see, like, Charlie pays for the candy he gets.
So true. So true. Or this is one of those things where Charlie knows those kids will keep on coming back for the goods. And so he gives them like a little taste, like a sample, like a drug dealer, you know? And then he charges them for the big stuff.
Yeah. He waits to ensnare you and then he gets you.
Everyone in this movie is a liar and a charlatan who is taking advantage of the children around them. And that's it. That's how we're ending the episode.
And on that note... Very good. Well done.
Well done. Okay, listeners, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, what candy would you risk life and limb for? You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/flockpod.
That's right. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.